So welcome back to the Championship Roundup. We've got a lot to go over in today's video. We've seen the first manager sacked of the season. We had some pretty shocking results this week, and we also had some absolute belters of goals scored. We also have a full fixture list coming up in midweek, so in the second half of today's video, I'll be giving you guys my score prediction. So in the description down below, you'll find all the games going on in midweek so that you guys can make your score predictions. And speaking of your score predictions, I will include your guys' comments on screen now. So if you did manage to get any of your score predictions correct this week, then fair play to you. Myself and FIFA both managed to get one correct. So 3 weeks into the season, I'm currently 4-3 up on FIFA for score predictions, so I'll hope to keep up that ratio. But without any further ado, let's hop into talking about some of these games. So we'll start out with Friday's game, which saw Fulham beat Huddersfield by 2-1, resulting in the sacking of head coach Sheff Wed. So the game itself took a little bit of time to get going. The first half, there wasn't really much in it, but Fulham took control in the second half. A shank clearance from Bakuna over his shoulder into the box. Mitrovic was on hand to put Fulham 1-0 in front. Huddersfield did get back into the game with their only shot on target coming from Carlton Grant, a header which just about squeezed over the line, but Fulham took back control in the 80th minute. Ivan Cavallero with a fantastic bending effort into the far post, and Fulham, it was a decent performance from them, a solid game. I think that Fulham's front three is good enough to win games on their own throughout this season. With the star power they've got in there, they've got a very capable midfield now with some of the additions they've made. Steven Sessegnon came into this side for this one as well. I was impressed by his performance. But obviously the big news was the sacking of Sheff Wed. Now, it's an interesting one because it's come only 3 games into this season, so that tells you that the board didn't have full confidence in this guy going forward, which sort of begs the question, why wasn't a change made in the summer perhaps, when they were able to give maybe a new manager, completely overhaul the squad and have a new identity going into this season? It leaves Huddersfield in a bit of a weird position now because a new manager is going to be coming in, although I don't necessarily think it was the wrong decision to sack Sheff Wed. You know, he only won 1 game in 19 in charge of Huddersfield. I think that coming into Huddersfield, he was always really set up to fail. You know, he was coming into a Premier League side who were all but relegated when he came in. I think that Huddersfield had given up towards the second end of last season, and that sort of hangover of relegation has continued into this year for Huddersfield. So Huddersfield fans, let me know down below who would you like to see come in as the new manager. And then we have Barnsley drawing 2-2 with Charlton. Some fantastic goals scored in this game, a game which I feel like either side could have walked away with all 3 points from, really. Cauley Woodrow opened the scoring for the home side with a spectacular volley. The ball fell to him on the edge of the box, he flicked it up and then with his next touch smashed it into the top corner. Brilliant technique with that goal. Charlton equalised just before half time though, a nicely worked goal once again. Johnny Williams had the ball on the right hand side. He once again being the provider for Charlton, flashed the ball across goal, and then Conor Gallagher was on hand in the box to find the bottom corner. Into the second half though, Barnsley managed to retake the lead. A really nicely worked goal, good intensity from Barnsley in midfield to win the ball back, and then after a few passes in quick succession, Connor Chaplin worked his way into the box and then managed to find his way past Phillips. Charlton defensively a little bit suspect for that goal, maybe they could have done a bit more to prevent it, but really nicely worked from Barnsley. Charlton were continuing to search for that equaliser throughout the second half, but Barnsley had so strong up until the 89th minute when they did win a penalty. Once again, Conor Gallagher being the person who won it. Not the most in it, but there was a coming together between the two players. Lyle Taylor stepped up to take the penalty, and it was one of the most casual and cool penalties I have ever seen. The sort of thing that you see Balotelli doing or something like that. He starts his run up from outside the box, just walks towards the ball, and then coolly puts it into the bottom corner and sends the keeper the wrong way. Massive fan of that from Lyle Taylor, but the game for this level is a 2-2, and it was a good watch. And then we have Blackburn claiming their first 3 points of the season with a 1-0 win over Middlesbrough. Wasn't the most quality on show for this one, especially from the away side. I was expecting a bit more from Borough going forward in this game, but Blackburn keeping the clean sheet, I'm sure they will be very happy with that one. The only goal to separate the two sides being the Danny Graham penalty in the 25th minute. A really needless penalty given away by Dick Steele. The ball was hooked towards the far post. For some reason he was holding on to Danny Graham's shirt. The referee gave the penalty. Graham sent Randolph the wrong way, and that was the only goal to separate the two sides. I would say that Blackburn were deserving of all 3 points, really. I thought that throughout the 90 minutes from open play, they were creating the better chances. You know, Randolph had to come up with a couple of saves, whereas Walton was mostly untested for this game. Blackburn defended quite well and dealt with the threats that Middlesbrough had going forward for this one. Greg Cunningham looked good on his Blackburn debut, and Sam Gallagher also looked lively for the home side, so a good way for Blackburn to get off the mark this season. For Middlesbrough, been a bit of a slow start for them. And then we had Brentford drawing 1-1 with Hull City, a really open game of football where either side could have walked away with all 3 points, and I must say, for a side like Hull, who have been a little bit inconsistent on the road as of late, they put in a really good performance for this game and could have well walked away with all 3 points from Griffin Park, which is quite a tough place to go to. It was the away side who took the lead through Jared Bowen. Bit of suspect defending from Brentford. The ball was threaded through to Jared Bowen on the edge of the box, who had an absolute acre of space. He raced into the box and then smashed the ball into David Raya's near post to make it 1-0 to the away side. Brentford did bounce back though in the 72nd minute. A nice ball in from Sergi Canos was converted by Ollie Watkins, and Like I said, both sides had spells on top for this game, but I thought Hull put in a really decent showing. They were looking good in midfield, could have easily won it. Grosicki hit the post with a really nice free kick, but in the end finishing as a 1-1 probably was the fair result. I've seen a few Brentford fans questioning the system that they like to play. Obviously they've been playing with that 5 at the back for quite a while now. Perhaps they could look to switch it up a little bit in home matches and get another body into midfield. Then we have Bristol City claiming their first win of the season with a 2-0 home victory over QPR. A really nice half volley to open the scoring for Bristol City, and then continuing on from that, Benicophobe capitalised on some pretty poor QPR defending for the second goal. I'm not quite sure what they were trying to do. It was a throw-in that QPR had, and then an awful mix-up between Bob and Joe Lumley, and then the ball fell to Benicophobe and he had the tap-in to make it 2-0 to City. Really poor from QPR, but Bristol City were well worth their 3 points. Adam Nagy in midfield was absolutely terrific for them. Obviously he opened the scoring for City in this one, but controlling the game really does look to be a tidy football. I'm sure that all the Bristol City fans are excited to see more of him as the season progresses. At 1-0, QPR did have some decent chances to get back into the game. You know, quite a few of them fell to Jordan Hugill. He just couldn't seem to quite find the target for this one. Bentley came up with some decent saves for Bristol City, but I think that they'll be thankful that they're now up and running for the season. And then we have West Brom beating Luton by 2-1. This one really being a game of two halves. Luton had the better of the first half, brilliantly took the lead. A really nicely worked goal. Martin Carani out on the right hand side whipped a superb ball in with pinpoint accuracy into Cornick, who was able to make it 1-0 to Luton. And Luton, you know, pressed well for that first half, made sure that West Brom were limited to half chances. But the substitution Bilic made at half time, introducing Diane Garner for his West Brom debut, really was the changing point of this game. He brilliantly got West Brom back into this game with an excellent finish into the far post from outside the box. And then just 3 minutes after that, in the 51st minute, West Brom were ahead after Diane Garner once again had got his second of the game with a diving header after a deflected shot has gone his way. So just like that, West Brom had the quality to flip this game on its head. And it's those fine margins that Luton are finding out now about the Championship. Luton, nothing to be disgraced about. It wasn't a bad performance from them. It was just that West Brom really turned it up for the second half, and West Brom picking up 7 points from a possible 9 so far, I don't think can have too many complaints. I think they are still a work in progress and will continue to get better as the season goes on. Luton, on the other hand, you know, they've only got 1 point this far into the season, but I must say they have had one of the toughest fixture lists in terms of the first few games they have had. So in a few games time, I think their fixtures do ease up a little bit, and I think that that's when we will see Luton really picking up a few more points. And then we have Millwall beating Sheff Wednesday by 1-0. Millwall are really going to want to make the Den back to being a fortress this season, and they've done that so far with consecutive home wins, beating Wednesday and Preston. For this game, the only goal of the game coming from Matt Smith. The ball swung in from Conor Mahoney from the corner. Westwood dropped a bit of a clanger for this one, tried to claim the ball, didn't get anything on it, and Matt Smith, being the target man that he is, was always going to bury that when a chance came his way. One player who's accustomed to scoring absolute screamers is Adam Reach, and he very nearly scored one in the first half with a ridiculous effort from long range, but that one just went over the bar. Wednesday were handed the boost going into the second half though, as Jed Wallace was sent off for a late tackle at the end of the first half. But Wednesday couldn't quite capitalise on that. They had a lot of the ball for that second half. They were playing it around, but with no real end product in this one. They just couldn't find that last pass at times. They introduced the likes of Barry Bannon, Jordan Rhodes and Luongo to try and influence the game in the second half, but couldn't get that equaliser. And you have to say that Millwall have started the season very well with 7 points from 3. And then we had Forest beating Birmingham by 3-0. Now, in my prediction video early on in the week, I said that Forest were probably one of the toughest sides to make a prediction for, because you never really know who's going to turn up. And for this game for Forest, the performance in this game compared to the one against West Brom, it's absolute night and day. Forest were terrific for this game. Joe Lolly opened the scoring for Forest in the first half after a nice set piece routine, smashed it into the bottom corner from outside the box. Lee Camp, a little bit questionable, possibly could have done a little bit better with that one, but Forest were running rampant going forward for this game. Joe Lolly turned provider for the second goal, hooking it into the far post where Lewis Grobban was able to direct it into the back of the net with a nice header, and then Dawson made it 3-0 in the second half. Forest could have easily had more goals than the 3 they eventually went on to get, you know. Amiobi had a good chance in the second half, grabbing as well, and Rafa Mir had a scorpion kick which just went over the bar. That would have been outrageous if that went into the back of the net, but really impressed with Forest in this game. I thought they were looking very good. Birmingham, on the other hand, their performance levels had drastically dropped since their last outing in the Championship, and it was a really underwhelming performance. You know, there wasn't a lot of positive to take from that from Birmingham. And then we had Stoke drawing 2-2 with Derby County. I think that slowly but surely Stoke are starting to build in the right direction. You know, this performance was a drastic improvement over their last home game against QPR. They were looking much better going forward, created more chances. It was just a shame that early on in this game they sort of shot themselves in the foot. Waghorn gave Derby the lead after just 2 minutes, quite poor defending from Stoke really. The ball came into the box and there wasn't much pressure from Stoke to stop it. But the man on call to get Stoke back into this game was Scott Hogan, scoring both goals in this one. I think the first goal eventually has gone down as a Scott Hogan goal. So maybe Scott Hogan can get his career back on track and Stoke could be the right club for him. He took his second goal especially really well in the second half to make it 2-1 to Stoke. Although Derby did get back into the game from the penalty spot, Martin Waghorn this time converting. He wasn't going to make a mistake after missing one last week. And towards the end, Waghorn did have the chance to give Derby all 3 points as he raced through on goal after a nice counter-attacking move, but Butland made the save and in the end it finishes a 2-2 draw. Much improved from Stoke over previous games. They're going to want to get their first win of the season as soon as possible now. And then we had Swansea beating my side Preston by 3-2. A really enthralling game of football, but such a frustrating one from a North End point of view. You know, the first half Preston were absolutely excellent. We were pressing the ball high off the pitch. Swansea couldn't really get their game going. You know, in midfield they were quite sloppy in possession. Preston were efficient both on and off the ball. We deservedly took the lead. Joe Rafferty, our makeshift left back for today, took the lead with a fantastic strike from outside the box in the near post. And the frustration from the first half was that we couldn't capitalise on more of the opportunities we went on to create, and then just before the half-time whistle went, Borja Baston got Swansea back into the game with a sweeping finish from inside the box, and that really seemed to kill Preston's momentum a little bit going into the second half. In fairness to Swansea, they were much improved in the second half, and I mean, so far this season we've sort of seen Swansea being a second half team. You know, we saw a very similar thing happening against Hull, but Swansea certainly turned it on for that second half. Byers got Swansea second, Preston got back into it with DJ from the penalty spot, but that only lasted for a couple of minutes before Borja Baston once again headed Swansea in front, making it 3-2. Really nice goal from him. In terms of Swansea, people like Borja Baston and AU make such a difference at this level. Like, they are absolute game changers, and if Swansea managed to keep hold of both of them while the international transfer window is still open, they could be set up for a really good season because them by themselves can win the matches. With North End, it was a really frustrating one not to get anything out of this game, especially with how well we played in the first half. I think that one maybe mistake from Alex Neil was obviously Louis Moult went off injured. Really sad to be losing him. He was brilliant in the game we had against Wigan. I really thought we'd go on and kick on with Louis Moult up front, but he's going to be out injured for a little bit, and we brought on Andre Green as his replacement up front. I thought we would have gone like for like bringing on someone like Stockley, but Green didn't really work as a number 9. But even so, Swansea turned it on for the second half, and Preston, we need to be better at the back. And then we had Leeds beating Wigan by 2-0. A professional performance from the away side. Wigan not helping themselves with Joe Williams getting sent off after just 21 minutes for a reckless challenge, which resulted in a second yellow card. If there's one side you don't want to be down to 10 men against, it's going to be someone like Leeds, who are so good in possession. Although last season we did see Wigan in a similar circumstance, being down to 10 men against Leeds at Ellen Road, where they managed to pull off an upset, but a similar game wasn't on the cards for this one, and Leeds were looking good throughout. In midfield they dominated things, especially being the man up. You know, people like Calvin Phillips and Forshaw really enjoyed possession for this one. Leeds had chances going forward and probably could have got more than the 2 goals they eventually went on to get. Forshaw was a standout for them for sure, but Bamford got on the score sheet twice for this one. I don't think he's going to get an easier chance than the first goal he scored in this one. Just a tap in really after Forshaw's header had come off the post. Bamford then got the second in the second half, and Leeds had chances to make it more than the 2 they eventually went on to get. So a really complete professional performance from Leeds in this one, who after 3 games played are sat top of the championship. And then finally for Sunday's game, we saw Reading smash Cardiff by 3-0 as they claimed their first win of the season. Now, in fairness to Reading, I think that in their previous 2 games, Reading fans were always quite patient in the fact that this sort of performance would come about eventually. You know, their summer recruitment's been very good, and they had shown glimpses in their previous matches, but for this one, they seriously turned it on. Their midfield was absolutely brilliant. They were working so efficiently. Ajaria, brilliant on the ball. Swift was linking up brilliantly. All their defence was looking fantastic, but Puskas really stole the show for this one. Realistically, how have Reading managed to sign this guy? Because he looks absolutely like he could rip the league up this year. The first goal especially, he picked the ball up inside his own half and then just ran at the Cardiff defence. They were scared of him. He had Will Vokes on him, completely shrugged him off, darted his way into the box and then brilliantly found the far post. He looks like an absolute steal of a buy. For the second goal, Swift and Puskas linked up again. He easily could have gone to get a hat-trick in this game. He was sent for their own goal, but that one just went wide. Swift made it 3-0, and Reading could have had more, you know, in this one. They had the penalty that was saved. They were bombing forward and causing Cardiff all sorts of problems. Like, Cardiff looked incredibly poor in this one. Reading made them look average, and if there's more performances to come from Reading like that throughout the season, I mean, who knows what's possible for them. They have some serious star power going forward now. But those were all the games that went on this weekend. In terms of my goal of the weekend, there were some stunners scored. I think myself, I'm going to give it to Puskas for his first goal against Cardiff City. It was a brilliantly taken goal. And then for my double whammy, I'm going to give Reading the result of the weekend as well for that 3-0 home victory over Cardiff. Reading, it was just a brilliant weekend for them. But we will now move on into my midweek score predictions. So all the games will be listed in the description down below so that you guys can make your predictions. And then if you do manage to get any of them right, your comment will be included next time. Birmingham going up against Barnsley. I'm going to fancy to end level. I'll go for a 1-1 draw. Birmingham desperately need a reaction from the Forest performance, but I expect them to be a little bit better at St Andrews. Barnsley, though, no mugs. They've shown they're good going forward so far. Derby against Bristol City, another game where I don't see all too much being in it. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw, see a few goals being scored in that game. Bristol City getting their first win of the season this weekend. They're going to hope to continue that momentum going to Derby, but that's not an easy place to go to. Hull against Blackburn, I'm just going to fancy the home side. I'll go for a 2-1 home victory for that game. Hull, I was really impressed with their performance against Brentford, and although Blackburn did get their first win of the season against Borough, I fancy Hull to be a little bit stronger at home. Middlesbrough against Wigan's an interesting one, and I could possibly see that one ending level. I'm just going to back Borough. They weren't particularly great at the weekend, but they need their first win under Jonathan Woodgate sooner rather than later, and against a Wigan side who haven't looked brilliant lately, it's a good chance for them to get that. Sheff Wednesday against Luton, I see a few goals being scored. Wednesday could do with bouncing back from the game against Millwall. They did create quite a few chances for that, but just couldn't quite get anything over the line. Back at home at Hillsborough, though, I think they may have a little bit too much for Luton. I'll go for a 2-1 home victory. Cardiff against Huddersfield is a really tricky one to predict because Cardiff were awful at the weekend, but Huddersfield are without a manager now. I'm going to say 1-0 Cardiff, but Huddersfield, you know, more than capable of getting something if Cardiff put in the same performance they did against Reading. Charlton have been a bit of a surprise package so far in the league. They're yet to lose a game, put in some really positive performances, but I was so impressed with Forest against Birmingham. I'm just going to edge the away side for a 2-1. Fulham against Millwall. Fulham have got the star power to get past anyone this season, but Millwall have shown themselves to be really resilient so far. They're yet to lose a game. They picked up a good point away on the road a couple of weeks ago against West Brom. I can see them doing a similar thing in this one as well. I'll go for a 1-1 draw in that game. Leeds going up against Brentford. Two of the sides going up against each other who tend to create the most chances per game in the Championship, so it should be a really good showing of football. I think from what I've seen of both of them so far this season, though, Leeds look to be a little bit more of the completed outfit, and being back at Ellen Road, I'll say 2-1 Leeds. Preston against Stoke. Now, Preston lost at the weekend, but it was still a good performance from us, and, you know, similar to Stoke, they drew at the weekend, but it was a good performance from them. Both sides are building in the right direction, whilst not necessarily getting off to the best start this season in terms of results. Lately, both sides have shown that they've got goals in them, but defensively, still a little bit suspect. I'll go for a score 2-2 draw. QPR going up against Swansea. Swansea's Achilles heel last season was their away form. If they can sort that out this season, they could be pushing up for the top 6 this year. Who knows? Defensively, QPR weren't great against Bristol City, but they continue to create chances in that game, and on another day probably would have got a goal or two. For that one, I'll fancy it to finish level. I'll say 1-1. And then finally, we got West Brom going up against Reading. Two sides who I was impressed with at the weekend. West Brom in the second half against Luton I thought looked very good, but Reading absolutely blew Cardiff out the water. I think that could be one of the best games to watch this weekend. I see goals being scored in it, and I don't think there'll be much to separate it. I'll go for a 2-2 draw. Really entertaining game of football. But there you have it, guys. There are my score predictions for the midweek games going on. So let me know in the comments down below if you agree. But apart from that, guys, that will now wrap it up for today's video. So if you do want to enjoy, make sure you leave a like. It is always massively appreciated. Make sure you subscribe for a bit of regular Championship content. But apart from that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.